morning, I'm talking to Steve Bell, who's a good friend of mine. We've sat together in lots of different meetings. Steve is a well-known speaker, thinker, and writer on mission issues. His particular expertise is on the field of relationship with the Islamic faith and with Muslims. And Steve has got a lot to say. So it's good to see you, Steve. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you, and working hard in the lockdown, and I think my forthcoming book is going to be the fruit of that. So I've kept busy and I've had a project.
Well, we'll get onto the book in a few minutes, because that's what I want to talk about. But beforehand, can we just give some context to that? And can you tell us just a bit about yourself? How did you come to be where you are now?
I'm of African Caribbean background, so that's interesting in itself, with roots in Senegal, which would give some kind of Muslim context going, 300 years ago to the family. But I'm a trained, well, first of all, I was a graphic artist, and then trained for teaching, went into teaching, and I was a serial short-termer in terms of experience, and used to hang about in my teens and early 20s on teams in South Europe and North Africa and so on. And so this sort of gravitating sense of call to give Muslim people the opportunity, and I believe the civil right or the human right to hear the good news about Jesus and to have the opportunity to choose, and that it should be in ways that are culturally appropriate to them, actually makes sense and communicates. So that's where I think it all started. Since then, I've been involved in a couple of pioneer projects, missional initiatives, led 3 agencies, chaired 2 NGOs focused on Sudan and the Horn of Africa. So there's been a thread throughout of Muslim lands. I lived for 10 years in the Middle East until the secret police felt it was time for me to expand my influence, like to leave the country. So I returned to the UK and have been involved in, first of all, training others, helping the prison service in cross-cultural training, parliamentarians, church leaders, and then it got to Bible weeks, these sort of bigger events. And so I think I became one of the champions of what is being called the grace and truth response to Muslims. So that's with a gracious attitude at one side, the other side, faithfulness to the gospel. So that's kind of who I am, and that's my heart.
And you've written a book called Grace for Muslims?
Yes, my first offering was actually Friendship First, which when I came back from the Middle East, I realized that so many Christians were asking serious questions, and realized that the world is living on their doorsteps and in their postcode. And so I was responding to a felt need with that, and that was like a training manual. So then I worked with Tim Green, and who brought his theological education by extension, EE expertise into it, and the Friendship First manual became the Friendship First course, which has really helped, I think, thousands of British Christians by now over the years, and spread to other countries. But Grace for Muslims was just getting to back to basics about why, not only why we should bother and be concerned for Muslim colleagues and
Yeah.
acquaintances, but what is the heart of God on the thing?
Yes.
And we know that it's been politicized. You get a political view on it. We know the media gravitate to particularly political violence or bullying from this minority of Islamist minded Muslims. But it seemed to me that nobody was speaking to a biblical, a kind of an attempt at a balanced biblical voice or an understanding of what followers of Jesus should be making of all this. And that these people are very much, well, we know in Britain the largest grouping among Muslims is the Pakistani folk, and how parallel they are to the Samaritans of this time, you know, as settled immigrants and as easy enough to be evident, and having a faith that actually is uncomfortably overlapping and shares some values and some peripheral, in fact, quite a few peripheral issues, even though denying core essentials of Christianity. And it's like, whoa, what do you do in that situation? So,
well, I'll put a link to Grace for Muslims under the video description.
Great!
I think it's really excellent, and actually,
thank you.
I think it's relevant beyond the particular topic of Islam.
Okay.
I think what it says about graceful evangelism, giving people respect and valuing them, actually is appropriate to any interaction between Christians and other people. I think there are lessons there for
absolutely.
Well,
I nearly fell off my chair in Northern Ireland one time. I was speaking in a church, and the pastor, and it was a training thing about folk from Muslim background. And the pastor got up at the end and said, "Everything you have said, Steve, tonight is pertinent to our relationship with Catholics."
Yeah.
And it's like just a light bulb went on. But it is the issue of the other, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, that's your previous publications. We're actually here to talk about a new book you've got coming out in April, I believe.
July.
Oh, it's
with Paternoster,
with Paternoster. You get a bigger name press than I do. So can you tell us about this? Is taking your thinking on a step or two further. Can you just explain to us where the book is going? What's the title, so we know what we're...
The title, Mountains Move, and the subtitle, Achieving Social Cohesion in a Multicultural Society. And I think that it hits, probably the biggest takeaway from it is how there's been a shift towards tribalism within British society and some other Western societies, but it's spoken to mainly a British audience. And minorities used to be sort of circle the wagons and face outwards about their rights and their concerns and all the rest of it to the wider society. But almost across the board, we find minorities now kind of breaking down into groups within that minority, actually either fighting each other or whatever, debating among themselves about what they think. And I found this trend going on, obviously not just in evangelical Christianity, which is vociferous, is the word, is it? That's prone to to fracture and, you know, birthed into protest of Protestants, but also among Muslims. So if Christians are arguing about what is appropriate and biblical witness to Muslims, the Muslims community are also fracturing about issues of life in a secular society and how to think of Christians and so on, as are the LGBTQ community fracturing over what to do about trans rights and whether they, you know, the ins and outs and if it's right and so on. So it's really saying to Christians, local church leaders, mission agency leaders, that we have a job on. We are now living in a social minefield, and it's no longer enough just to preach the gospel. We have to teach it, the relevance of it, to earn the right to preach it. And there is this, in a post-Christian society, assumptions that we hold can just go back centuries, and we assume that we're connecting and that we're relevant, and we've not checked for 50, 60 years. So really, it's speaking into that need, and it's saying all evangelism or mission has social consequences, and all social engagement has evangelistic or missional consequences. So nothing we do now in the public sphere is not seen. How we speak about Muslims, how we treat Muslims, how we seek to be a witness among them. So times are changing, and we need to keep up with it. So that's really what it's about. And it came to me as a visual, like a daydream.
Yeah.
Where I saw the terrain of British society like a mountain range, and different mountains representing different stages of the British journey. And as Chris Wright said in a brief foreword that he kindly did, that it's like the legacy of the British past has created the lunacy of the British present. So issues that we're wrestling with, we need to see what are the reasons for these reasons. And so one of the mountains, in fact, the central, like Everest-like thing, is Mount Imperial, the colonial legacy, and the way that that does mark us, even though we think that was ages ago and that's no longer influencing.
Do you honestly think that that is still an issue? I mean, it is a long time. Do you honestly still think that colonialism is an issue? I mean, it's a long time ago. Haven't we moved past it?
This is the issue. And for all of the mountains that I'll quickly cite in a minute, the issue is that there is a residue in the way we think. It's almost, culture is an amazing reservoir, isn't it? That it's got stuff in that we're not even aware is there. And so we end up like goldfish swimming in water, and it's just so natural that we just think that this is reality, this is normality. And so there are assumptions about the rest of the world that I think give themselves away sometimes in the way news is broadcast. For instance, a jumbo jet goes down and there are 3 Brits on it, and it's headlines. But if there are no Brits, it's further back.
Yeah.
they're just telltale signs that our perspective is where we are and how we as a country still deal and prepare to deal with the Falklands, Gibraltar, uh, anywhere else in the world, and Hong Kong indeed. So I think it's just an exploration of the way we tell ourselves what history was doing, and we read it, and so it's seen our way, when actually the colonial era had a dark underbelly. And I think for the book, it's showing how South Asians were part of that empire and how we've had to journey with them from a master-servant relationship through to a commonwealth, colleague, equal type relationship. And I think if I just go on to mention this other twin peak, that this peak is kind of split at the top like an M, and the next one's hegemony, which is like aided and abetted by the colonial mindset, and it's political power, economic power, and all the rest of it, with the chips stacked in our favor. And so that kind of goes together with how we treat the world, and we're used to the world needing our paternal help. We're less used to needing help. Then the next one is Mount Ethnos and the racial pecking order that has persisted. Maybe I think there's evidence, and I go back to what you said a few moments ago, evidence of the younger generation getting free of some of these assumptions, but there is still enough of us who are children of empire, as it were, with living memory as to how the world was. And then another one, political correctness, another one, which is Mount Correct, Mount Strident and the woke culture, Mount Occlusion, which are the underlying issues can lead to a heart attack. And in a sense, this distresses me, but it's happening to the House of Islam. And so I deal with major fragmentation, major joining out, as people say in the North, abandoning Islam. And then lastly, the Mount Mission and the tensions going on about what the gospel is, what mission is, what's appropriate in witness to Muslims, how to think of Muslim violence, Islamist violence, and so on. So you get this package of issues, and I think the politically correct one is huge, and I think it's estimated by many people, but including many Christians. And it's led to a sort of timidity. Well, perhaps all of these things combine and form this pond in which we're swimming. And I think it's led to a timidity that I think Chris Wright at one of the Keswicks, I was there, spoke of a loss of confidence in the gospel. And, even if it's post-colonial guilt and, or be careful, and so on. So,
well, Lamin Sanneh is a great example of that, when he went to a British Methodist missionary and said, he came from Muslim background, said he wanted to become a Christian. The missionary said, no, go back and stay being a Muslim.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So, yeah, there's an awful lot going on, and I think, really need to, what's the word? We need fresh spiritual entrepreneurship, which I refer to as the apostolic, and fresh social insight, which I refer to as the prophetic. And it seems to me that in both our local church, denominational and stream movements, and in our mission agencies, there is a reluctance to admit these people. And we're living, for instance, if you think of denominations and the local church situation, we're living in a day when it's as valid to support fully people who are engaging in social media and the national discourse for the Christian faith, and who are trained and gifted to do it, as being, one of the key frontiers of Christian mission in the 21st century. And I make the point in the book that the agora of Socrates' day, the marketplace, the commercial marketplace, courtesy of COVID, the agora has moved online.
Yeah.
Now, the Areopagus, if you will, of Act 17 and the Apostle Paul has moved online. This is where the debates are going, podcasting, debating, YouTube, and the issue is not just that Jesus is the answer. The question of our age is, but what's the question? And this is back to the issue of teaching the relevance of Jesus Christ in the 21st century, which earns the right to preach the gospel of precisely what he did. In the book, I quote Professor Jordan Peterson, a Canadian. And I struggle to pin him down. If I'd say he's a man of faith, but he's not a Christian. He's not committed to any religious stream. He's fascinating. But he recently was talking about a dream he had of a cathedral graveyard where ancient warriors were raised from the dead and were standing on their gravestones, ready and armed, and started fighting each other. And then this image of the ascended Christ came into the picture, and everybody stopped fighting and bowed the knee to him. And what does this mean? And he then went on to, as a man who doesn't have a personal commitment to Jesus Christ, he went on to say, if you took the best kingly, honorable, righteous behavior of any monarch in history, and put it into one human being or one personage, it would be the person of Jesus Christ, and how that he is the epitome of the transcendent good. And and I know that Islam revere him, Hinduism the same, and all the rest of it. Even if Gandhi said, Jesus, yes, church, can we talk? So the fact that the Judeo-Christian heritage is locked around, and has emanated, and I'm speaking of the best bits, emanated from his teaching and the law of Moses, obviously, and the teaching of Jesus and the apostles and all that, and how this is bedrock. So in the book, I argue for the Judeo-Christian heritage as the common platform that is agreed on by faith groups as a kind of a container or platform of national values.
Yeah.
That even people of no faith,
Mhm.
you know, you've got Richard Dawkins saying, "I'm an atheist, but I'm an Anglican atheist."
Tom Holland explores this in great detail in Dominion,
Yes,
which is
yes,
the best book I read
how?
last year, I think.
Yes, yes, it's a meaty one. But yeah, yeah, it's quite remarkable. So that's one of the calls going on in my book here, that the Judeo-Christian heritage needs fighting for in the right sense.
Yeah.
Arguing for, and that we show the relevance, and that it is an accepted way to social cohesion. So, yeah, that's what's going on
So
in the book.
who would you hope would read the book, Steve?
Well, it's kind of written at a Daily Telegraph Times level. But I would hope that all Christian leaders would read it. I would hope that training colleges, theological and Bible, particularly ministerial training colleges, would have it on their shelves. But also mission training college, to realize what is locked into the mindset for Western Christians as they the global South and so on, and to realize that it's not all hunky dory in terms of seeking to avoid theological hegemony, if you will, or theological, because it's worked its way out theologically. Theological colonialism, the way that we deal now, that needs to be totally as colleague servant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not as colleague who is being benevolent because we're the others, is the old hegemonic thing. It was interesting for me. I've been in the business 40 years and traveled nearly 120 countries, and I've had, as a black person, white person, I've had leaders in Africa and Asia speak to me, and so it's part of my lived experience as to what's going on in their minds and hearts, the impacts of Western well-meaning treatment and assumptions about how to go on and what's important and so on. So it's definitely, I think, got something to say both to mission leaders and those preparing for mission, whether overseas or here.
Thank you, Steve. We're coming to the end of our time. Thank you very much for coming online and chatting to me. Just as we close, if you were in a group of British church leaders and mission leaders, and you just had a couple of minutes, 2 minutes to say something to them, what would your message be? I didn't warn you about this one.
Well, in a way, the issue is, perhaps it's just my mind, but the issue of local church and mission agency seems quite different. I think for church leaders, it would be along the lines of how many activities in your regular program are giving access to Christian community and the reality of Christ worked out in that, that is not tied to your building.
Mm.
How many of your activities are not tied and are out with, and are you following the risen Christ through brick walls? And in John 20, he says, when he's done it, he says, Father sent me, so send I you.
Yeah.
And that is, so this is the reversing of Christendom, which I think COVID has helped us with. So I think that would be my question to church leaders. I think to church leaders and mission leaders, I would want to say, how much openness is there to spiritual entrepreneurs, bracket apostle, apostolic people, with a small a, and how much access do you have to social analysts and insight and foresight people, bracket prophetic people?
Yeah.
And if you haven't got them either in your boards or leadership team, you need to get them.
Mm.
Otherwise, we're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, which I think we are doing.
No, I think you're very right there. Again, thank you very much, Steve. Could you just remind us the title of your book and when it's coming out and who's publishing it?
Mountains Move by Steve Bell, and out in July on the Paternoster label.
Well, I for one, am really looking forward to reading it, and I'll review it on my blog. Thank you, Steve, for your time. The Lord bless you.